So without any further ado, I want to introduce to you our speaker for tonight, Daniel Provençal. And Daniel reached out to me last year in the spring and said, you know, I've got a couple of presentations and I'd love to come and give them to the RASC Montreal audience. I thought this was fantastic. We had him in for the Race to the Moon 2.0 last year. And when he reached out to me again just before the eclipse and said, you know, I'd love to do another one this spring, I'm like, yes, let's do it. And so we found a date, and thankfully it coincided with our existing library night, so we could do both together. So Daniel, we're looking forward to building more things onto our bucket list by listening and joining your adventures going through 25 years of visits.
All right, thank you. Thank you and good evening. Thank you to the RASC for having me tonight. This is a very simple presentation, no technical stuff like last year. In fact, this came up because my spouse and I met 26 years ago when we met at an astronomy event. So while we were traveling afterward, we always were trying to go to observatories, professional observatories, if they were close enough. And she suggested this presentation this year instead of doing something more intellectual. So here it is, very simple. And I'm going to do something that I never do. I'm going to read from something else because I didn't put any text on the pictures because these are traveling pictures, and so I didn't want to put any text on them. All right, so we're going to see a few continents. We were lucky enough, so it spans about 25 years of traveling. The first one is Lick. So Lick Observatory in US was in 1998. We had business in San Francisco, so we're not too far from San Francisco. We're about 116 kilometers. And Lick was one of those places that I wanted to see because of the big refractor that's there. And so here you see the big dome, and on the right, where I'm standing at another section of the mountain, you see the dome in the background here. Lick was founded quite a while ago. This is Mount Hamilton, by the way, 1,200 meters high. Founded in 1876, so that's a while back. And Mr. Lick donated money so that the telescope could be built and the observatory constructed. And he's actually buried in the pier of the telescope.
Wow.
But you see are usually my pictures, and Mr. Lick, let me try to figure this out. Mr. Lick is here, and I'm going to point with this. He's buried under here. This is the only picture that's not mine, because in those days, 1998, getting wide angle was something professional. And you'll see pictures will change with time as well, because this is filmed. And so I'm proudly sitting at the control station of the telescope. And this is one of those telescopes that's so long. In fact, it's 36-inch diameter, but it's over 10 meters long. So long that in order to, this is the eyepiece, in order to reach the eyepiece, the floor has to move. Because in those days, that's how they did it. So they installed instruments around here, and they moved their whole floor up. So in fact, Licht was the greatest refractor in the world when it was installed, and it's been the second largest in the world since then. It's managed by the University of California these days. At the time, $700,000 were given so that this observatory be constructed. And going to the top, I got dizzy because I was a passenger. My spouse was driving. And we counted afterward 365 curves to get to the top. So if you go to Lick, be prepared.
Wow.
And there is an interesting seat facing west where you can sit and look at the sunset. Very nice place to be. not used for professional stuff much anymore, but 1998, again, a different trip. I had business in Los Angeles, and Palomar was my first, it was the first observatory in my mind when I was thinking about astronomy when I was young. And so Palomar is 213 kilometers from Los Angeles, 1,700 meters altitude. It's also quite an interesting drive up.
Yeah.
Built between 1928 and 1949, it was stopped during the war. And a very interesting story, if you ever have a chance to read the book about just the primary mirror of the observatory, it's very fascinating. The telescope is called Hale, from one of the directors, George Ellery Hale. And it's a Richer-Chrétien, 200 inch. Again, we see little problems with wide angles here, but the telescope here, the primary mirror, this is 200 inch diameter. And it's a horseshoe mount. You can see it in the next page, a bit better. Yeah. A drawing by Russell Porter. Fascinating. An original one is in the entrance of the visitor station. And so this is a horseshoe at the end, and then those long tubes here, and the telescope revolves around this axis. This is equatorial, this is towards the polar star, and this is the declination axis. And there's another observatory where it has the same style of dome as the big one. And when I visited there, I noticed this 1960s struck with the sign on the door. And this is a mask that was used to finish the figuring of the primary mirror when that was installed in 1948-49. At the time, the Rockefeller Foundation gave $6 million to construct the telescope. It was a big endeavor. And it was the largest in the world until 1975. So Hubble discovered the quasars there as well. And Caltech is the current manager of the observatory. So 1998 was a good year. We went to Chile. This was for tourism. Sister-in-law was working at the embassy in Santiago. So we arranged to go to see Cerro Tololo. Cerro Tololo is hard to get a tour of because you need to send a letter in at the time. You needed to send a letter in. They would write back to you. And they had one Saturday afternoon open per month. So you need to drive up there, be there at the right time, 1 o'clock, and to see the telescopes up there. So many telescopes, we had a tour of one. So when you reach the top, you're faced with this little series of domes everywhere. And this is the dome we're gonna go inside, and this is me at the bottom. So it shows you the size of the dome. This is it's a big one. This is 86 kilometers east from La Serena, which is a city on the side of the ocean, the Pacific Ocean. The telescope that we see here is the Victor Blanco telescope, was built in 1976 already. And so it's a Richer-Chrétien as well, 4-meter diameter. So this is it here, horseshoe mount as well, but different arrangement because the telescope is in the horseshoe and pivots. The declination axis is here. And you can see here, so it looks like Palomar, but Palomar rotates, the declination is here. Well, this one declination is on the horseshoe, maybe it's better. From a stress point of view, I'm not a mechanical engineer, and Peter is an electrical engineer like me, so we don't know, but anyway. One interesting point is that they do flat fields as well, so they have inside a round disk, what they had at that time anyway, to do a flat field. And my technical background sometimes pushes me to take pictures of the control rooms. So here's the control room, bottom right. Not very useful afterwards. Sometimes it is. I'll show you a couple interesting. It's being managed by an organization called Noir Lab. It's a National Optical Infrared Astronomy Research Laboratory. And they specialize now in optical and infrared studies. Now the year after, I had business in Tucson. So I was working at SPAR, like Peter, we were colleagues there, and had business in Tucson. So organized to see different observatories, and the one I decided to show you was Kitt Peak. In fact, Kitt Peak has quite a few observatories at the top. The one I wanted to see is this one, weird shape, because I have this fascination for the sun.
Yeah.
And so we can see on the upper right, the McMack-Pierce Solar Observatory. And in the center is a solar patrol telescope that is used around the world in many places, but they had one there. Different telescope here shows a different dome. Here I am sitting on the railing, and the telescope is in the background here. There's another solar telescope. It's called a vacuum tower telescope at this point. And the only reason why I could get on the site at that time was because I went to the website and I said, how can I get into McMack-Pierce telescope? And at the bottom of the page in 1999, you see the webmaster. It was Phil Hill. This guy was an astrophysicist. He was doing the web page for the observatory. And so we got to see it. And in fact, we synchronized our visit with the Mercury transit in November 1999. So the way this works, if I go back to the previous page, the light comes in here on 3 mirrors. The center mirror has 2-meter diameters. It was the largest solar observatory in the world at the time. Sunlight goes here, and then it's directed towards this axis, which is the polar axis, towards other mirrors in the middle, and then down vertically into an observation chamber. This is where we are on the next page. And you see the tube where polar line here, where the solar flux comes in and is directed down. And here we can see the light coming down on the table here, and NASA was using the bigger telescope, and we were just looking at a table. This is the upper right, me taking a picture of this table. And the sun was on there about almost 1 meter diameter sun image. This is what you see here, and this is tiny Mercury transiting the sun. So I put it in the background as big as I could. This is a tiny Mercury. But anyway, we saw it at the same time as NASA, and it was so bright in that room that we had to wear glasses, sunglasses. So you can look like my spouse, my girlfriend, and other guys are wearing sunglasses just like I am here taking a picture of this room. It was bright and it was exciting because we were there all at the same time witnessing an event, historical event. Built in 1962, this telescope. And this long tube is actually cooled to minimize turbulence as the sun rays come down this long tube here. Biggest mirror, as I said, 2 meters, but 2 secondary side mirrors of 0.8 meter diameter. They have optical, adaptive optics as well. And it's managed by the Association of Universities for Research in Astronomy nowadays. That was exciting. Again, tourism, 2000, we went to Russia. And this was an interesting visit and with a little bit of a sad one as well. Pilkovo was a great observatory of the 19th century. So it was built in 1839. And in 1895, you can see this building, several domes, but it's not exactly the configuration of the 19th century because it was completely destroyed by the Germans at the Second World War. In fact, you have rare remnants of what some of the original building was left with at the time. This is a watercolor of what was left of the central building you saw in the previous picture. after the war. So they lost the big refractor you see on the right. That refractor at the time was one of the largest in the world. It was a 30-inch diameter Alvin Clarkinson refractor, just like very similar to Lick. And the director from 1882 to 1889 was Otto Struve. Maybe you've heard the name. So, and he discovered some double stars at the time. And it's currently being managed by the Russian Academy of Science. And when we had a tour of this, it was a little bit sad because the gentleman gave us the tour, showed us the first story of the main building, which was a museum, very nice, where we saw a little, a very nicely organized museum with small telescopes and stuff. But unfortunately, the rest of the buildings were in disarray. And the only telescope he could show us was this refractor, and it had the tarp over it because it was raining on the telescope, on the refractor. So it was very sad. But again, I'm sure incredible science was done there. And the page before, I think. Yeah. One other detail is Max Soutov was one of the directors. Max Soutov from the optical recipe. You can see on the lower left a little memento and the original telescopes from Mr. Max Soutov himself. So we're not far from St. Petersburg, about 19 kilometers away from St. Petersburg. So if you go to Russia, a little bit more difficult these days. Even the minions, they like telescopes. In 2002, we were traveling to Denver for business again. And so I contacted the local astronomy club. So this is amateur astronomers like we are. And they were very happy to have us there during one of their meetings. And it was, their meetings occurs at the Chamberlain Observatory, which is this very nice 19th century building. This was founded in 1888. And inside, as you might not be surprised, there was an Alvin Clark refractor as well. I was trying to see as many as I could. Still 20 inches diameter. And it was great to see it at night. We could look at the moon through it, so it was very memorable. At the time, Mr. Chamberlain gave $50,000 to have the observatory constructed in 1888. And so some pictures of the movement, which worked with governor, speed governor, I don't know if we can see it. But inside here, there was those speed governors with spheres, you know, that extend,
flywheel.
It's a speed control system, mechanical control system to regulate speed. The moon was up there, and I got to take a picture. I think it was one of the first digital cameras that I had. It was a cool Pix at the time, and took a picture through the lens of a 20-inch refractor. So that was exciting for us.
What does it say in there?
This one?
What astronomers do on cloudy days.
On cloudy days, yes.
There you go.
And at the time I knew of this cartoon, but I don't know if this is the original one. That's why I took a picture of it, because I'm not sure if it comes from that place, but it was interesting to see. 2002, tourism again.
Yeah.
We wanted to organize a trip to Hawaii, so we said, what can we see to Hawaii? So Mauna Kea is this fabulous mountain where many observatories are still being constructed, new ones today. So we contacted somebody we knew from Quebec, from the University of Montreal, Nadine Mancé, who did their PhD here and moved to Mauna Kea, and she's still there at the Canada, France, Hawaii telescope. She's still there. She is. Looks like 16-year-old, but she's doctor. She's a doctor in astrophysics, and she had completed that study. So those studies. So and she's still there today. So we saw the CFHT, which is again a horseshoe design of a mount, very similar to Palomar. And this is what the dome looks like on the outside. It was built in 1999, and it's 4,200 meters elevation. So It didn't bother me. I was younger at the time until I tried to lace my shoes. And then I got very busy and I had to hold on to something. It's a 3.58 meter Richer Chrétien telescope. And it's a combined management with University of Hawaii, obviously, National Research Council in Canada, and the CNRS in France as well. It's currently closed. You can't go and see it because it's being refurbished until 2029
Yeah.
with an 11-meter telescope. So the configuration will change from a equatorial mount that you saw, the horseshoe mount, to alt azimuth, because 11 meters, I think they can't fit that into the dome with the...
Wow. Bigger than the Keck,
Sorry?
bigger than the Keck.
Yeah, yeah, which we saw in the first picture, I forgot to say, but the twins
Yeah.
were the quick telescopes.
How long were you up there that time? Like how many hours?
Probably 2 hours, 2 hours.
Okay,
Because when we got up there and when we planned that trip, we asked Nadine, is it possible to go see Gemini North? It's your neighbor. She said, oh, that would be great because I haven't seen it yet. She had just moved to Hawaii.
yeah,
And so our next telescope is to see is Gemini North. Now on this picture, I don't know why, but the CFHT is here, and this is Gemini North. So actually it's about 100 meters, maybe less.
yeah.
So we went and walked to Gemini North, and it snowed at the time when we were just walking, and it was snowing on us, and
Wow.
very bizarre weather, very changing weather. Anyway, we got to Gemini telescope, which was great. Had just been constructed because Gemini North was constructed in 1999 as well. 8.2 meters, alt azimuth mount.
Yeah.
So alt azimuth mount. This is the secondary shown here.
We walked under the primary.
You did? Okay.
Because they were changing out at the time in 2001, it was with Santiago, and they were changing out the CCD camera setup. And I remember walking through the hole, looking
Oh, yeah?
at the
Secondary.
at the secondary, and it's, wow.
Big, so big, so big.
It's
It's a
crazy.
little bit difficult to render on the picture. It's surrounded by louvers. The dome is surrounded by louvers. You can see here, and louvers, and this is the control room again. This is the size of nuts and bolts that hold some of the pillars. And this is where the instruments are located. So they're on a rotating system, because as you do alt azimuth, you scan the sky, the image rotates. So you need a rotation, an additional rotation of your whole
For
instrument
field
setup.
rotation, right?
Yeah. So this picture was taken, and you can see that this is the primary mirror, and this is the setup for all the instruments. And it's actually rotating during this exposure. This is relatively sharp. It's a little bit less sharp because it's actually moving. And this is, because it's an alt azimuth mount and you need to rotate the instruments, you need to manage the cables. So I took a picture of the cable management screen.
Wow.
So that's one of the reasons
Look at
why I
the-
take pictures.
Next to the truss.
Yeah, this is me on the right, standing beside one of the legs.
It's crazy.
The size, very, very big. So it's 8.2 meters, as I said. The cost was not that expensive, but it is $1999. It was half of $182 million US, because there is Gemini South. I didn't show it, sorry, but in Cerro Tololo, not too far away, is Cerro Pachon. It has the Gemini South on it that was being constructed while I was there. This one is a shared, again, management, NSF in the US, NRC in Canada, Chile's involved, Brazil's involved, Argentina and Korea is involved, nowadays anyway, maybe not at that time, but it's interesting to know. And one guy from University Laval, in fact, was director in 2005 to 2006, and Jean Valéroy was at the time the director of the observatory, Gemini North. Very interesting to see. I don't know if we can go in the dome these days, but it was possible at the time. And we were with an astrophysicist from CSHT, so it helps.
Wow.
2004, we are going to France with the astronomy club of the planetarium. a group of about 14 people. We go to France and we decide to have a tour of some observatories because the goal is to see the transit of Venus at the time, which was, we could see the whole transit of Venus from France, while here in Canada, I think, or Quebec, we could see it only at sunrise in 2004.
yeah.
So the first thing we saw was Meudon, which was in the suburbs of Paris. You can't mistake this for, we're not in Germany, this is France. This Meudon was an old castle that had been destroyed by fire, and they kept only the central portion, and they constructed this amazing dome on top. It's very big, constructed in 1896. And it's an interesting setup. Again, you'll see wide angle issues. I'm trying to show the refractor here, which is this, I don't know if it's blue or green or aqua. These are two refractors coaxially aligned in, I think it is wood that holds the lenses together. So this is the two refractors at the top. One is optimized for visual, one is optimized for taking pictures at the time. This is late 19th century, right? And so the big one is the visual one, 83 centimeters in diameter.
Wow.
16-meter focal length. Amazing. So you can see it's a German equatorial mount, just like Lick and other big refractor observatories. And this is below this picture here. Yes, I guess this is the bottom of the mount with the starting on the polar axis. No, the polar axis is here. It's a different axis. No, here's polar axis. Who knows? It's polar axis.
Yeah.
So as part of the same trip, we went to the Paris Observatory. And this is the oldest one we'll see in the presentation tonight. It was founded in 1672.
Wow.
So, and it is located at Avenue de l'Observatoire, not very difficult to find, in Paris. Now, in the 125th first years of the observatory, the directors were 4 Cassinis, from father and son and so on. 4 Cassinis, and Lalande, Arago, Le Verrier, and one was Janssen. It's a big observatory because it includes many of the other observatories around Paris. It employs 333 people. It's big. It's a big place. You see the dome of the main refractory telescope at the top. This is a statue of one of the Le Verrier. And this is the telescope inside their dome. Not very big, but still, it's 38 centimeters in diameter. Equatorial mount again, German. And the dome, for some reason, is all like wrinkled everywhere. It's metal, it's all wrinkled. And this interesting slot, which has a round bottom. And it was, again, late 19th century, right? This one is 1854, 9-meter focal length. This is Dr. Doléa, who was the president of the club at the planetarium at the time, leaning in a chair that was used for observing. In this case, the ground is not moving, but you have to go up a little ladder to go and reach the eyepiece.
That's like armchair observing.
Right, very nice. He looks very comfortable there. And Paris Observatory, I haven't been to Greenwich, but Paris Observatory so far has been the nicest inside because it's all decorated like in your 18th century or 19th century decoration with wood paneling, and also historical telescopes being shown in some of the windows. And the Meridian of Paris at the time, because you know 19th century, there was the Meridian in Paris, there was Greenwich and other places. The Meridian of Paris goes through the building, and frescoes on the ceiling. It's a very nice place. So the Meridian, the Paris Meridian, was worked on in June 1667 because they had to go from Paris down to the Mediterranean coast. And so they did that work in 1667. Very early work on the Meridian. So from Paris, went to see other observatories, but the one I wanted to show you specifically was Pic du Midi. Now this is an old observatory, not the buildings, but the observatory. The first activities were in 140 years ago. And it's 2,800 meters high. It's very high. We have to go through a cable car to go to the top. There's no way to go with the road, so we can just imagine how they constructed this thing. When you get to the top, I'll show you, this is a small-scale model of what the top looks like. Very complex. It looks like, when you get there, big monolithic concrete slab. It's amazing, full of domes. And you can just imagine how to construct this without a road. They didn't have a road to the summit. So we went to see one telescope there specifically. It's called the Bernard-Liot telescope. And on the model, it's this one, at the extremity here, and it's in the clouds. It's on this side, in the clouds right now, looking in this direction. And to go and see that telescope, just to show you how weird the weather is there. When astronomers go to the top, they need to prepare for a couple of weeks in case they can't go back down at night or in the morning on the cable car. So we go through the observatory through a concrete corridor. So it was very interesting. It's not a big telescope, but it's the largest on the France territory. It's a 2-meter Cassegrain telescope. Again, horseshoe design, very similar. Only 2 meters. This is secondary. Primary is here. What's interesting with this observatory, and it's the only one that I saw like that, the dome, it doesn't have a slot. It has a diaphragm that opens just like a lens. And so you align the telescope with this diaphragm, and then you open it, and you open to the elements. The thing is, even from the seeing point of view, it's very difficult because all the air from the building goes through exactly the right place where you put the telescopes. So I don't think it's optically it's very, very good. It's the only one I've seen this like this. All right, and we. All right, we're here to see the transit of Venus. This is my video of the transit of Venus. There's a big thing at the time there. There was an argument about the fact that when Venus goes to the side of the sun, when it touches the side of the sun, is there a drop effect? Big debate at the time, and we hadn't seen any transit of Venus since the 1890s, I think. So nobody alive. And it turned out we didn't see any drop effect at all. So it was, in the end, it was probably the quality of the optics of the 19th century that made this effect. Anyway, there's a big. This guy Charles went there to see this drop. Couldn't see it. So that was the discussion about. 2004 was a good year. I transitioned from SPAR and EMS to the Canadian Space Agency. And I went to Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico. Lucky we saw it at that time because it's been destroyed recently.
Yeah.
When you get to the observatory, you get through so many curves again in the road that you get dizzy. It was constructed in 1963 on the northwestern side of Puerto Rico, only 500 meters altitude, so it's not very high. But it is a radio telescope, and we'll see, I'm showing this picture now because the other picture won't see these poles that hold the secondary instruments above the radio telescope. It's a radio telescope, so again, wide angle issues, but this is the surface at the bottom of this natural crater. It's made of panels of aluminum, 38,700 panels of aluminum that are aligned in a spherical shape. Can't move this because it's fixed, it's in the natural crater. So you can't move this, so what you do is you move the secondary. Secondary is this contraption here. It's held by these three poles. One of them I showed in the previous slide. And it's a little bit difficult to judge how big this is. The telescope aperture is 1,000 feet diameter. So it's very big. When you get to it, it's very impressive. It was the largest single aperture telescope in the world until for the period of 53 years. Built in 63, as I said. DARPA was having it built at the time. It was a military installation. And it has a megawatt radar. It was to detect missiles coming above. And also it was used to map asteroids. So if you've seen grainy images of asteroids rotating, it's probably done with the Arecibo Observatory. To judge the size again of this telescope, radio telescope, this little sphere suspended is 100 feet diameter. It's very, very big. This is all moves, turns around and moves on this axis as well. Very surprising. And we could see this one because somebody from the Canadian Space Agency called Steve Torchinsky was an astrophysicist at the agency, and he left the agency to go to Arecibo working on this telescope specifically. So Steve is here and with his wife, and we were visiting, and we could see the control room. This is the control room, and this is the screen of the control of the secondary contraption here. This screen with the triangles, it's organized in a triangle. And this is again 100 feet diameter. Very surprising. It was in 2020, had a problem with one of the poles, and the cables failed, and the whole secondary, this whole contraption just fell into the bottom of the crater and destroyed the rest. Somebody told me a couple of weeks ago that they're still thinking of recommissioning.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
It was also prominently featured in 1995's GoldenEye James Bond movie.
Oh,
They had a big fight at the end, and that spike kills the bad guy. Yeah,
okay.
And the movie.
Good way to do it.
well,
Wow.
that's true
It's
too.
very, very impressive to see. Again, winding road, crazy road. You need to take some medication not to get dizzy. Yeah. Even Marvin likes the telescopes, like we do. In 2004 was a good year. We went to an event organized by Coronado in Tucson, Arizona, called Hands on the Sun, HOTS, Hands on the Sun. And so part of that week of activity centralized around solar observing was a visit of the Large Binocular Telescope on, it's on Mount Graham, Arizona, 3,200 meters high, and it's quite a unique mountain. So this is a binocular telescope that has two mirrors of 8.4 meters each. That's what you see here. You see the mountain, it looks like a ship. It's red also, because it's designed in Italy. It's probably Ferrari red. It's paid by Italy, obviously, Germany and USA for 100 million euros at the time.
Wow.
2004. It was being constructed, only one mirror was installed at the time. So this is the mirror, 8.2 meters, I said 8.4 meters. Yeah, one of the two mirrors. And this points toward the secondary. This is the secondary. It was not yet in function, but it was so large. On the bottom right, what you see is one of the carriages that looks like a train. One of the three carriages underneath the telescope, the binocular telescope, because this is an alt-azimuth mount again. It rotates. This is like elevation, and around here, if you turn, this is azimuth.
Wow.
Very big. It really looks like a ship or some weird.
Do they do like, this is not obviously visual, so they use interferometry to merge the two images, or?
Yeah, he managed to do it in 2010.
Okay.
With interferometry started to work. Sorry, 2008. But I'm not sure they use it regularly. Although it's on the same mount, so it should be easier to work
Yeah.
and do interferometry than doing two separate observatories like in
Okay.
other
Like the
sites.
Yeah.
Adaptive optics were installed in 2010 and gives it a resolution when it works greater than the Hubble telescope, I read. So it's being managed by, in fact, a group of 7 universities in Italy, Germany, and the US. Very interesting. 2005, so that's the front page of my presentation. It's Yerkes. The Yerkes Observatory has the largest refractor in the world still today. 19th century construction, as you can see in styling. And I was reading at the time in Sky and Telescope magazine that Yerkes was about to be sold to some company that would destroy it and build condos instead.
Yeah, of course.
So that summer, because of this article I read in Sky and Telescope, my girlfriend and I went to Chicago, because this is in the suburb, well, far from Chicago, but close enough, 140 kilometers from Chicago. Went to see specifically Yerkes because it was supposed to be destructed. Built in 1897. It's in Wisconsin, so it's not very far from Chicago, as I said, 140 meters. And it's not 140 kilometers. It's not very high, 330 meters high. It's a gift from Mr. Charles Yerkes. And the telescope, we can see it. Next slide. This is the telescope. It's a 40-inch diameter Alvin Clark and Son doublet at the end. So it's a refractor telescope. The focal ratio is 19.3 for 19-meter long telescope. So it's very, very big. Again, the floor is moving to reach the eyepiece. So it's a movable floor. You need a little stairway to go up to the equatorial mount. This is the stairway. Very exciting to see. And when we were touring this facility, it was in the afternoon. We met this gentleman, and we said, is it possible to look in the telescope tonight? He said, it's going to be cloudy tonight, but you can come back. So at night, we were alone with this guy, the day guy. He let us in at night. We were 3 people, the 3 of us, walked around the whole observatory, saw the secondary telescopes and all of that. This is the pier below the main telescope as well, and below the floor. So we could see all kinds of stuff at night that we couldn't see during the day. Very nice, again, just by asking and knowing that we were amateur astronomers. So it's always worth asking. People are passionate like we are. 2009, went to Beijing. Beijing, we went there because it was the total eclipse of the sun in China. And Sky and Telescope was organizing with Travel Quest a trip to China. So it was a big thing, and we saw this observatory, which is the oldest, before Paris. It's older than Paris. It's at the top of this construction here. And video, kind of sketchy video, but anyway, we see it's all non-telescopic instruments, and it's open to the sky, so no domes. The reason is it was built originally in 1442, during the Ming Dynasty. The instruments are all in bronze, and they've been upgraded with some of the Jesuits in the 17th century. They upgraded some of the instruments and redid them. Very simple instruments, usually to measure angles. So the one here on the left, this one was built 1673, sextant. Theodolite here on the right, 1715. Very simple, but measuring angles of, items that rise on the horizon, and other instruments as well. Sphère armillaire on the left here, very interesting. quite a few details of little stars being inscribed in the bronze dome. Ameillary sphere here as well with these circles. And this was an interesting small-scale model also done in bronze of a large sundial that had existed there centuries ago. It was not there anymore. Big sundial in the ground. Skip a few years, go to California. We said we're going to go from top to bottom, of north to south of California, and the observatory that I want to see is the Solar Observatory in Big Bear. So, Big Bear is the name of a lake, 160 kilometers east of LA. And the observatory, the Solar Observatory, is constructed on a peninsula, goes inside in the middle of the lake. And again, I went to the web page on this observatory, contacted some of the professors, and it's being managed by New Jersey Institute of Technology, so contacted them via email, and we got in as well to visit this solar observatory, which was one of the largest in the world as well. The prime mirror, 1.7 meter. Now, this is solar telescopes, not used at night. So it's a lot of power coming in from the sun. You need to manage that. It's also an interesting configuration because you don't want to have the secondary in front of the primary mirror. It's an offset parabola. And so the secondary, which is shown here in the center, is actually liquid cooled because you get kilowatts of power, right? The sun is about, on a nice day, it's 1 kilowatt of power per square meter, about. So 1.7 meter diameter mirror, you can calculate that it's a lot of power in a small area for the secondary mirror. In fact, they did some tests and they burned some metal at the secondary location. Very interesting to see. Again, we were just a few people in the observatory. You can't visit this in the observatory normally, but we were let in. And the way this works as well is the telescope is above the ground floor, and below are all the instruments. So it's organized so that the light from the telescope goes down below the floor and reaches these instruments, which is in the basement. The technician here, and here in the middle you can see an idea of the kind of resolution they get. It's a very small field of view. It's 120 arc seconds. 2 minutes of arc. Very, very tiny field of view. Managed by, as I said, New Jersey Institute of Technology, but originally by Caltech, was built in 1969. Cool place to be. Very cool place to be. Jump a couple of years. We go to an event on Tenerife, Canary Island. The event is called Starmuse. I don't know if you've heard of Starmuse. Yeah. It's a festival with Brian May, the guitarist from Queen. He has a PhD in astrophysics. His thesis director and him decided to join music and astrophysics into one event. And so in 2016, it was at that location, and it was a big event. I think it was the second or the third one, still being organized today. Something to do on your bucket list if you like astrophysics and if you like music. It's great. And they have very high-profile speakers. At one point in the room, there were 12 Nobel Prizes in the room. Penrose was there, Hawkins was there. We had the Russian cosmonauts. We had Chris Hadfield was there, played music with Rick Wakeman from Yes. It was just amazing. And so, as part of this trip, I wanted to see one telescope that was not on the tour organized by the festival, and it was the Vacuum Tower telescope. So again, the same way I contacted astrophysicists, and we got into this this amazing telescope, so vacuum tower telescope, built in 1988 by Institute Leibniz of Solar Physics. Optical system is a little bit different than what we've seen before. So series of mirrors at the top take the sunlight, send it into a vacuum tube, and at the bottom here is a spectrometer. This is underground, this is above ground. So on the left, you can see the structure. So there's the spectrometer underground, and then vacuum, the rest of the telescope is above. An interesting item that was in the lobby as we go in the observatory is this long strip of 35 millimeter film.
Wow.
It is the solar spectrum. Peter, you were talking about spectroscopy before. It's the only time I saw the solar spectrum being shown in its entirety in color, supposedly, color on color film. So this was a strip about 1.5 meters long, and it had a movable magnifying glass. And you could move around and see all the thousands of lines of different chemical elements on the surface of the sun. It was very, I've never seen another one. I don't know who built it. Very interesting place to be as well. It's a tall tower, as you can see lower right, in like 20, not in operation. Mirror to send the sunlight downstairs, control room again, and adaptive optics since 2003. The opening of the telescope is 70 centimeters. Not a lot, but still, again, sunlight. A lot of energy coming in. That's why the vacuum, it's vacuum tubes below, so you reduce the turbulence. The focal length of the telescope is 46 meters. Different kind of approach. And the resolution is 0.2 arc seconds on the sun. And it's being managed by 4 different institutes in Germany of astrophysics, in Germany. Yep. Even Snoopy likes a nice telescope, nice sky. Jump to 2023. Last year, we went to New Mexico to see the annular eclipse of the sun. So New Mexico is a location of Jodie Foster. Hopefully, no one didn't see her. She wasn't there. They shot the movie Contact there. And this is the very large array. So it's a radio telescope. Very difficult to photograph because it's so wide. You'll see in the next couple of pictures. I tried to do a scan. This is on a plateau in New Mexico, 2,000 meters altitude, built in 1970s, and the actual name is the Carl G. Jansky Very Large Array National Radio Astronomy Observatory. It's a structure in a Y. So you have 27 antennas that are aligned in a Y shape, and each leg of the Y is 21 kilometers long. So you move the antennas depending on what you want to measure and the resolution that you want to have. And very large. The antennas are being moved around, not on their own, but using some kind of a truck like this one on rails. And it picks up the antenna, moves it to a different location, puts it on concrete piers. Very interesting. Each antenna is 25-meter diameter. And this is Marc Jobin, the astronomer at the Planetarium, if you know him. At 25-meter diameter, it's very big. When you are at the bottom, you see this 209 tons of metal being moved, for each different configuration. It's quite amazing. And the resolution can reach 0.04 arc seconds in radio waves if you put it, I guess, at the extreme of each leg of the Y configuration. It works from 74 megahertz to 50 gigahertz, sorry. And it's been upgraded to optical fibers. It was all waveguides originally in the 70s. And one last one, same trip. Oh baby, we went to a location called Sunspot. This is the name of the small town that has this observatory, the Sunspot Solar Observatory. Very, well, relatively close to White Sands, 80 kilometers. We're at 2,800 meters altitude. It was built in 1969 by the US Army to figure out what was going on with the solar cycle and the interference with radio communication for military purposes. And so they constructed this observatory. It's very well known by its strange shape, and I wanted to see it for so long. It was very interesting to tour. This is a public tour. So you can see the structure here of the observatory. The scale is hard to comprehend because it's 41 meters above ground and 59 meters below ground.
Oh my goodness.
And the way it works is that, so the focal length is the sum of the two. And the way this works is that the light goes down, these are vacuum tubes, and they go back up here. And on this platform, this is a rotating platform, 40 feet in diameter. And the lady here is standing on that rotating platform that's currently rotating as we were there, because she put on the ground those little green things here, and it was moving as we were discussing with her the observatory. So this is the whole telescope, including the platform, is rotating because the sun, if you have this arrangement and it's not polar aligned, the image will rotate. So they decided at the time to rotate the whole platform and the telescope. It's suspended in mercury. This is a mercury bath at the top. It weighs 250 tons, and it just floats on mercury. It's just amazing. And this lady was giving a great description of the telescope, and I was asking specific questions about solar telescopes. I'm fascinated by them. And at the end I said, are you an astrophysicist here? She said, no, I'm a librarian. Retired librarian. Excellent presentation. Excellent. So if you want to do spectrometry with this, you need to send the light to secondary access tubes that are suspended on the same system. Those lateral tubes here, you see at an angle, are spectrometers. Strangely enough, all of this suspended in the mercury bath. And I tried to film the inside. Very nice paint, salmon color. You have these white spheres all around the platform. Very nicely done. And then you see all the technical stuff around this is the main tube, and these are the spectrometers that are suspended. So you have optical benches on this 40 feet diameter platform. They're all rotating with the instruments. Just very strange. Yeah, it's being managed nowadays. It's not used that much for professional stuff, but it's still being used. And it's operated by New Mexico State University and the US National Solar Observatory. We were in New Mexico to see the annular eclipse, so we had a little bit of material, but it was mostly, just with binoculars for us. And this is a series of pictures I took. And the most interesting sections were when the first and second, this is first, second, yeah, contacts here. So you could see the moon, the moon valleys and mountain, just like Bailey's beads for a totally solar eclipse. So it was very interesting. We're a group again from Canada there. So that's it. That's my last observatory. Thank you for the time.